Porter stood in the center of the great assembly hall and felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. The chamber was vast beyond human imagination, built by ancient hands to hold representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Floating platforms rose in tiers around him, each one carrying delegates from species that had walked among the stars when humans were still living in caves. It smelled of different atmospheres mixing together, and the light came from crystals embedded in walls that were older than human civilization itself. He had spent 15 years building relationships with these beings. He had learned their languages, studied their customs, and earned their trust one conversation at a time. Now they were about to vote on whether humanity deserved a place among them. Arbiter rose from his platform at the highest tier. They were tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that held the cold light of distant stars. They had ruled the council for longer than any species could remember, and was the oldest among them. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of ages. The matter before us is simple, said. Humanity has been part of our community for 200 years. In that time, they have spread across 17 worlds. They have formed alliances with 30 species. They have built trade networks that reach into every sector of hellspace. And he listened and waited. He knew what was coming. We called it progress, continued. But we must ask ourselves a difficult question. What happens when one species grows too fast? What happens when their ambition outpaces their wisdom? It was rippled through the assembly. Daniel saw some delegates nodding, while others shifted uncomfortably on their platforms. Humanity is young, said. They are clever and determined, but they lack the patience that comes with age. They push boundaries that have stood for. They ask questions that should not be asked. They reach for things that should not be touched. And Elisa Grant stood behind Daniel in the shadow of the human platform. She was his military, a one who had faced dangers across a dozen worlds without flinching. But even she felt tension in this room. What is he really saying? She whispered. He's saying we are a threat, Daniel replied quietly. Not because of what we have done, but because of what we might become. One long arm toward the assembly. I call for a vote on the motion of banishment. Humanity shall withdraw from all council territories within 30 standard cycles. They shall return to their home system and remain there until such time as the council determines they have earned the right to rejoin galactic society. The vote began. Each platform lit up with colors representing the choice of each species. Blue for banishment, gold for allowing humanity to stay. Daniel watched as the lights appeared one by one, scattered across the vast chamber like stars being born and dying. Lisa counted under her breath. It is close, she said, very close. When the final count appeared on the central display, the blue lights outnumbered the gold. The motion had passed. Humanity was banished. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Daniel, waiting to see how the human ambassador would respond. Would he beg for mercy? Would he threaten retaliation? Would he weep for the colonies and lives that would be uprooted? Daniel took a slow breath and stepped forward. His voice was calm and clear when he spoke. When delegation accepts the verdict of the assembly, he said, we will withdraw from council space within the time allowed. We will honor our agreements and settle our debts. We will leave peacefully. Cries rippled through the chamber. This was not the response anyone had expected. For Daniel continued, I wish to say one thing before we go. You have judged us for our ambition. You have punished us for growing too fast and reaching too far. Perhaps you are right to be cautious. Perhaps we are too young and too bold for your liking. Looked up at, meeting those cold alien eyes without fear. Remember the moment, Daniel said. Remember how you treated a species that came to you in friendship. Remember how you rewarded those who built bridges instead of walls. And remember that the galaxy is vast, and there are places beyond your borders where we can grow without your permission. Turned and walked toward the exit, Lisa falling in step beside him. The assembly watched in silence as the humans departed. As they were outside the chamber, Lisa spoke quietly. That was well done. But what happens now? We cannot possibly evacuate all our colonies in 30 cycles. He allowed himself a small smile. Earth Command has been preparing for the possibility for years. We knew the saw us as a threat. We knew they would eventually move against us. So there's a plan. There's always a plan, Daniel said. The council thinks they are sending us into exile. They think they are pushing us back into a small corner of the galaxy where we will wither and die. But they have made a mistake. He's frowned. What mistake? Assume the known galaxy is all there is, Daniel said. They have mapped the same territories for 100,000 years. They have never looked beyond their borders because they believe there is nothing to find. But our scientists have been studying the region beyond council space, the places they call empty and dead. Walked through corridors of ancient stone, passing delegates who watched them with curiosity and pity. Regions are not empty, Daniel continued. They are different. The council species cannot survive there because their biology is wrong for those conditions. But humans are adaptable. We evolved on a world of extremes. We can live in places that would kill any species in this assembly. He began to understand. We are not going home to Earth. No, Daniel said. We are going somewhere better, somewhere the council cannot follow. And when we return one day, it will not be as refugees begging for scraps. It will be as something greater than they can imagine. And them, the great assembly hall stood silent and satisfied. They had removed a threat. The balance of power was secure. Everything would continue as it had for. Had no idea what they had just set in motion. While Shaw stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the screen that showed 1,000 ships moving through space. Each ship carried families, workers, soldiers, and scientists who were leaving behind everything they had built over 2 centuries. The evacuation of humanity from outer space had begun, and it was the largest movement of people in human history. That's report, he said to his crew. 17 colonies have begun loading procedures, his communications officer replied. We are on schedule to meet the council deadline. But felt no satisfaction. These were not just numbers on a screen. These were real people losing real homes. Children who had been born on distant worlds would never see their birthplaces again. Families were leaving graves behind, memories behind, entire lives behind. Planet below, Governor Maria Santos was manning the evacuation of Nu, the largest human colony in space. She walked through streets that were emptying day by day, past buildings that would soon stand silent and abandoned. People moved around her carrying boxes and bags, loading transports that would take them to the waiting ships. One stopped her. Governor, where are we going? They say we cannot go back to Earth because there is not enough room. They say we are heading into unknown space. Is that true? Put a hand on the woman's shoulder. It is true that we are not going to Earth. Our home system cannot support all of us, and frankly, that is not where our future lies. We are going somewhere new, somewhere we can build something better. But the unknown regions are dangerous, the woman said. Everyone says nothing can survive out there. One is wrong, Maya replied. Trust me, I have seen the research. The council species cannot survive out there, but we are not like them. We are human. We survive everywhere. But above the colony, Shaw received a visitor. Dr. Cole arrived on a shuttle from Earth, carrying Dave files that contained years of secret research. She was a who had spent her career studying the regions of space that the Council had declared uninhabitable. Admiral, she said as she entered the bridge, I bring instructions from Earth Command. At her to his private office where they could speak freely. Tell me what you have found. It a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. The familiar territories of Council space glowed blue, covering a vast region of stars. But beyond those borders, the map showed areas marked in red, regions that the Council had ignored for 100,000 years. The Council believes these regions are empty because their sensors cannot detect anything useful there, explained. Their technology is designed to find the resources they need, but human sensors work differently. We detect things they cannot. Pointed to several star systems in the red zone. These systems contain energy sources unlike anything in Council space. The radiation patterns would kill most species within hours, but humans can adapt. We can build shielding. We can modify our technology. We can live there. The map, how many habitable worlds? By Council standards, admitted. But we do not need their standards. Give us 10 years and we can transform these systems into something the Council cannot even imagine. They cast us out because they feared our potential. Let us show them what that potential really looks like. Evacuation continued for 20 cycles. Ships came and went, carrying the last humans out of territories they had called home for generations. Some alien species watched with satisfaction, glad to see the troublesome newcomers leave, but others watched with regret. Ambassador of the came to show in secret on the final day. There were a small species who had befriended humanity early on. They had voted against banishment, but their voice had not been enough. Stop what is happening, said, but we can help in small ways. I bring supplies that are not listed on any manifest. Medicine, seeds, technical data, things you will need in your new home. But the gifts with gratitude. You take a great risk doing this. If they discover your actions, they will punish your people. Things are worth the risk, replied. Humanity was kind to us when we were weak. We do not forget kindness, and I believe we will see each other again someday. Final ship departed from New with Maria Santos aboard. She stood at a window and watched the planet shrink behind her, the cities and fields and forests becoming smaller till they were just patterns on a sphere, and then the sphere itself became just another dot among millions of stars. Fleet gathered at the border of Council space. 1,000 ships carrying 12 million humans, all their hopes and fears and dreams compressed into metal shells floating in the void. Shaw addressed them all through a broadcast that reached every vessel. We leave behind everything familiar, he said. Today we begin a journey into the unknown. The Council has banished us because they fear what we might become. They thought they were punching us. They thought they were pushing us into darkness and death. Pause and look at the stars ahead, the regions that glowed strangely on human center. We're wrong, they have given us something precious. They have given us freedom, freedom from their rules, freedom from their limits, freedom to become whatever we choose to be. Fleet moved forward, crossing the border that no Council species dared to cross. Behind them, the lights of civilization faded. Ahead of them lay mystery and danger and possibility. Santos found Cole in the observation deck of their ship. The two women stood together watching the strange new stars appear. Are you afraid? Maria asked. I'm terrified, but also excited. We are about to discover things that no one has seen for millions of years. We are about to build something entirely new. What if we fail? We fail trying, said, but I do not think we will fail. Humans have faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters of every kind. We always find a way. That is what makes us human. Fleet sailed on into the darkness, leaving Council space behind forever, or so the Council believed. Years had passed since the banishment, and humanity had not died in the darkness as the Council expected. Instead, they had built something remarkable in the regions that others called empty and dead. Bell guided his exploration ship through a field of energy that would have destroyed any Council vessel. His crew moved efficiently around him, monitoring systems that had been designed specifically for these strange conditions. The radiation outside was intense, but their shielding held perfectly. There it is, said, pointing to them flowed a structure that was clearly not natural. It was enormous, larger than any space station humanity had ever built, and its design was unlike anything in the known galaxy. Angular shapes connected by sweeping curves, made of materials that glowed faintly with internal light. It had been here for millions of years, waiting to be found. Ancient ruins, whispered his navigator, just like the others. It was the sense such structure had discovered in the past 2 years. The frontier was not empty at all. Long ago, before the Council species had even evolved, another civilization had lived here. They had built wonders across these stars, and then they had vanished, leaving their creation behind. On Horizon Station, the largest human settlement in the frontier, engineer Sophie Park was working on her latest project. She stood in a laboratory surrounded by machines of her own design, devices that harvested energy from the strange radiation that filled this region of space. Output is increasing again, her assistant reported. We are now producing 3 times more power than any reactor in Council space. Sophie smiled with satisfaction. Good, send the data to the other stations. Everyone needs to upgrade their system. Door opened and Admiral Shaw entered. 5 years of frontier life had added lines to his face, but his eyes were sharp and determined as ever. Sophie, we have a visitor, he said. A ship has crossed into our territory. This was unexpected news. No Council species had ever ventured into the frontier before. The conditions were supposed to be deadly for them. Was that possible? Sophie asked. Developed new shielding based on observations of our fleet, explained. They sent an observer to see what we have accomplished. High Arbiter wants to know if we are suffering as expected. Sophie laughed. Then let us show him exactly what we have been doing. Mithras was the observer sent to inspect the human exile. He was old even by standards, and he had voted in favor of banishment 5 years ago. He expected to find humans struggling to survive, perhaps begging to be allowed back into Council space. What he found instead left him speechless. The station was a marvel of engineering. It orbited a star that burned with colors they had never seen, drawing power from radiation that should have been fatal. The station itself was home to 200,000 humans who lived and worked in conditions that would kill any Council species within minutes. How is it possible? Mithras demanded as Shaw led him through the station. Our scientists said nothing could survive here. They said these regions were death zones. Our scientists were wrong, replied calmly. Or rather, they were right about Council species. You cannot survive here, but humans are different. We adapt. We change. We find ways to live where others cannot. I saw children playing in parks filled with plants that had been modified to thrive in the strange light. He saw factories producing technology that made Council equipment look primitive. He saw people who were not suffering but thriving, building a civilization that owed nothing to Council approval. This is impossible, he kept repeating. This should be impossible. To the research center where Bell had brought his latest discovery. The artifacts from the ancient ruins were being studied by teams of scientists who were slowly unlocking their secrets. Found these in structures scattered across the frontier, explained. Whoever built them lived here millions of years before the Council existed. They understood things about the universe that your species has never imagined, and they left their knowledge behind for anyone brave enough to look for it. Thruss examined one of the artifacts, a device that seemed to bend light around itself in impossible ways. His hands trembled as he touched it. If the Council knew about this, he said quietly, they would send fleets to take it from you. Could try, said, but they cannot survive here long enough to mount an invasion. Their ships would fail, their soldiers would die. This is our territory now, and we are the only ones who can live in it. Park joined them and showed Mithras her latest invention, a communicating device that could send messages across the frontier instantly, faster than anything the Council possessed. Are not just surviving, she told him, we are advancing. In 5 years, we have made discoveries that would take Council scientists centuries to achieve. The banishment was supposed to destroy us. Instead, it set us free. Thrust returned to Council space with a report that he knew would cause panic. The humans were not dying. They were growing stronger. They had resources and technology that the Council could not match. And worst of all, they showed no interest in revenge. What are their intentions? Demanded when he read the report. Do not know, Mithras admitted. They could have threatened me. They could have sent demands. Instead, they simply showed me what they have built and let me leave. It was as if they wanted us to know. To know what? Thrust thought about the children playing under alien stars, the factories hung with power, the ancient secrets being uncovered day by day. We made a terrible mistake, he said, and that someday they will return. It began to spread through Council space. Traders who ventured near the border brought stories of human ships appearing from the frontier, sleek and powerful, before vanishing back into the deadly regions that no one else could enter. The humans were not gone. They were waiting, and when they finally decided to return, nothing would ever be the same. Years after the banishment, Council space was falling apart. They had ruled for so long that they had forgotten how to solve problems. They had grown comfortable with their power and lazy with their responsibilities. When crises came, they had no answers. Roots collapsed as smaller species fought over resources. Diseases spread across worlds that lacked the meta to fit them. Ancient enemies resumed old wars that the Council could no longer prevent. The galaxy that had seemed so stable was crumbling from within. Then watched the reports from her office on Horizon Station. She was the first leader elected by the humans of the frontier, chosen by people who had been born after the banishment and knew no other home. She was 40 years old, sharp and pragmatic, and she understood that humanity was approaching a crossroads. The request for aid, her secretary announced. They are facing a plague that their doctors cannot treat. They are asking if we can help. Bertha, they had secretly supplied the evacuation fleet with medicine and seeds when no one else would help. Now they needed help themselves. Tech Dr. Cole said, ask her to prepare a medical team. We will send them to space. The secretary hesitated. Madam President, they are still part of the Council. If we send aid, we will be violating the terms of our banishment. The terms of our banishment said we must leave Council space, replied. They said nothing about refusing to help people in need. Send the team. It was just the beginning. Over the following months, humanity quietly extended help to species throughout the Council. Medicine for the sick, food for the hungry, technology for those who needed it most. They asked for nothing in return and made no demands. They simply helped because they could. Holt disagreed with the approach. He was the commander of the frontier military, a force that had grown powerful in the decades since banishment. He came to it with concern. Showing weakness, he argued. The Council cast us out, they voted to destroy us, and now we send them gifts, they will think we are desperate to return. Look ahead, they will think we are better than they expected. They will see that banishment did not make us bitter or vengeful. They will see that we have become something stronger. What about justice? Demanded. What about the colonies we lost, the lives that were uprooted? Do we just forgive everything? Forgiveness and weakness are not the same thing, said. Let me show you what strength really looks like. Took him to the border of Council space where the human fleet was gathered. 100 ships of advanced design, carrying weapons and technology that the Council could not match, had built this force himself, and he knew its power. I gave the order, said, these ships could reach in 3 days. We could destroy their cities, scatter their fleets, and end their dominance forever. That is power. Then why do we not use it? That is not who we want to be, replied. The Council expected us to die in exile. When we survived, they expected us to come back angry and violent. They expected us to prove that they were right to fear us. I refused to give them that satisfaction. As to arrive in secret, just as he had done 10 years before, he found waiting for him with Daniel Porter at her side. Daniel was old now, his hair white and his steps slow, but his mind was still sharp. He had lived long enough to see the consequences of the banishment unfold exactly as he had predicted. The Council is ready to talk, said. Not officially, not publicly, but there are many species who want humanity back. They see what you have built. They see how you have helped those in need. They are ashamed of what was done to you. And Daniel asked, High Arbiter still poses in change, but his authority is weakening. Other species are beginning to question whether they deserve to lead. Some are even saying that humanity should take their place. Consider this carefully. We do not want to we do not want to rule the Council. What we want is simple. We want to be treated as equals. We want to participate in galactic society on our own terms. It can be arranged, said, but there must be a gesture, something that shows the Council what humanity truly represents. In preparing for the moment, she activated a display that projected across the entire frontier, reaching every human settlement and every allied species. Of the galaxy, she said, 10 years ago, humanity was cast out of the galactic community. We were told we were too dangerous, too ambitious, too young to be trusted among the stars. We accepted that verdict and departed in peace. Voice reached Council space through networks that human engineers had quietly established over the years. In our exile, we discovered things about ourselves that we never knew. We found strength in adversity. We built wonders in the darkness. We became something greater than we were before. And now we return not as conquerors or beggars, but as partners. Paused, letting the word settle across 100 worlds. Offer friendship to any who want it. We offer trade, technology, medicine, and knowledge. We ask nothing except respect. The past cannot be changed, but the future is ours to write together. Humanity is ready to take its place among the stars. The question is whether the galaxy is ready to welcome us. Sejanid and silence fell across the frontier. Then slowly, responses began arriving. Species that had voted for banishment sent apologies. Species that had secretly helped send celebration. And even some, young ones who questioned their elders, sent messages of hope. Return had begun. Years after the banishment, a new assembly gathered in neutral space between the Council territories and the human frontier. The old Great Hall on Prime was too small for what was about to happen, and too symbolic of an era that was ending. This meeting required something different, something that belonged to no single species. A porter arrived in a shuttle piloted by young officers who had been born in the frontier. He was 83 years old now, his body frail but his spirit unbroken. 20 years ago, he had stood before the council and accepted their verdict with dignity. Now he had been invited to witness the moment he had worked toward his entire life. Bell walked beside him as they entered the new assembly chamber. Was the face of the frontier generation, a man who had never known Council Space as home. He had explored the ancient ruins, uncovered secrets lost for millions of years, and helped build a civilization that owed nothing to the species who had cast humanity out. How does it feel? Asked as they took their places on the human platform. I looked around the chamber at representatives from 96 species, more than double the original council membership. Many of them had joined only after humanity proved that the frontier could be tamed. They were here because humans had shown them possibilities they never imagined. Feels like the beginning of something, Daniel said, not the end. Arbiter was present, though his platform was no longer at the highest tier. They still held influence, but their dominance had faded over 2 decades of decline. Other species had grown stronger while they grew weaker. The galaxy had changed and had not changed with it. And opened the session with a simple statement of purpose. We are gathered to discuss the future of galactic civilization. For too long, that civilization was defined by those who held power at the expense of those who did not. Today we begin building something better. Representatives from dozens of species spoke about their hopes and fears. Some wanted humanity to join the council as full member. Others wanted the council itself to be reformed or replaced. A few still harbored resentment and suspicion, but their voices were outnumbered by those who saw the possibilities of cooperation. Speak, and the chamber fell quiet. He was ancient now, even older than Daniel, and his silver skin had dulled with age, but his eyes still held the cold light that had condemned humanity to exile. Years ago, this assembly voted to banish humanity from our territories, he said. I supported that vote. I believed humans were a threat to the stability we had maintained for. I believed they would bring chaos and destruction if allowed to grow unchecked. Paused and looked directly at Daniel across the vast chamber. I was wrong. Words hung in the air like a physical presence. No one had expected the High Arbiter to admit error. And he did not die in exile, continued. They did not become bitter or vengeful. They built a civilization that rivals anything in council history. They discovered secrets we could not imagine, and when they had the power to punish us for what we did, they chose instead to help those in need. Lowered his head in a gesture of respect that no had ever shown to another species. Ruled the galaxy because we believed we were wiser than others. We believed age granted us the right to decide the fate of younger species. We were arrogant, and that arrogance nearly cost us everything. I asked humanity to forgive us, and I asked this assembly to recognize what we should have seen from the beginning. Humans belong among the stars, not as guests or subordinates, but as equal. Chamber erupted in discussion. For 1,000 years, no had ever apologized to anyone. This moment would be remembered for generations. For order, and then invite Bell to speak on behalf of the frontier generation. Stepped forward, a man who represented everything humanity had become in exile. Born 3 years after the banishment, he said, I never knew council space. I never experienced the colonies we lost or the lives that were uprooted. To me, the frontier is home. The strange stars and deadly radiation and ancient ruins are all I have ever known. Looked around at the assembly, meeting the eyes of species who had once voted to destroy his people. Be angry about what happened before I was born. I could demand justice for crimes committed against my parents and grandparents. But what would that accomplish? Would it bring back the lost colonies? Would it heal the wounds of exile? Would it make humanity stronger or better? He shook his head. Frontier taught us something important. It taught us that the universe does not care about grudges or grievances. It only cares about what you build and what you leave behind. We chose to build something good. We chose to become the kind of species that helps others instead of hurting them. That is the humanity I know, and that is the humanity I am proud to represent. Vote was called. Species after species declared in favor of humanity, joining the new galactic order as founding members. Not as minor participants seeking approval, but as architects of a future that would be built on cooperation instead of dominance. The count was complete, turned to Daniel Porter. Ambassador, would you do us the honor of casting the symbolic vote on whether humanity accepts this invitation? Rose slowly, supported by a steady arm. He looked at the assembly, at the thousands of representatives who were watching the moment. He thought about the young diplomat who had stood in the old Great Hall 20 years ago and accepted banishment with grace. He thought about the long years of exile, the discoveries and struggles and triumphs that had transformed humanity into something new. Half of humanity, he said, his voice still strong despite his age, I accept this invitation. We will join this assembly not to rule or to dominate, but to serve and to build. We will share what we have learned in the frontier. We will work alongside every species that desires peace and progress, and we will never forget the lessons of our exile. He paused and smiled. Tried to banish humanity. They tried to push us into darkness and death, but we took that darkness and made it our home. We took that death and turned it into life. And now we take our throne among the stars, not because we conquered it, but because we earned it. Assembly rose in acknowledgement. Platforms that had once voted for banishment now cheered for humanity. Himself stood in respect for the species he had once tried to destroy. The chamber of the stars burned bright across a galaxy that was forever changed. Humanity had returned, not as exiles seeking forgiveness, but as builders of a new order. The throne among the stars was not a seat of power or a position of dominance. It was simply the place where humanity belonged, earned through patience and wisdom, and the refusal to become what others feared. Now Porter watched the celebrations begin and felt peace settle into his old bones. The work was not finished. It would never be finished. But the foundation had been laid, and the future stretched out before humanity like an endless frontier waiting to be explored. They had been banished and they had returned. They had been rejected and they had become essential. They had been feared and they had chosen to be loved. It was the human way. That was how they took their throne among the stars.